So a variable is essentially an object or a container which has a name and a value. So we saw earlier the string or str variable which had the value hello world in our example. I could create a new variable here using var. So that is the keyword in Swift to create a variable. And I could call my variable name. And I could give it a value of Rob. Simple as that. So that bit of code there creates a variable, and the variable is called name, and it has the value Rob. So very quick challenge here. Can you create a variable called tree and set it equal to oak? I'm sure you managed that. Very simple. Var tree equals oak. That's it. So now we've created another variable which is called tree, and it has a value of oak. You can see the playground is nicely updating everything automatically for us there. In fact, we can get rid of a bit of distraction there and just deal with what we're interested in. Okay. Both of these variables are known as strings because they are strings of characters essentially, in this case letters, but they could be letters plus numbers plus symbols. Another type of variable are number variables. So we might have var number equals 5. And then we've created a variable called number and set it equal to 5. This is known as an integer variable. So an integer is just a whole number. So we can set this number variable to be any whole number, but we can't now set it to be Rob or oak because it's already set to be an integer. So very quickly, can you create a variable called age and set it equal to whatever your age is? I'm sure you managed that. For age equals 33. Fantastic. So that's two variable types we've seen so far, strings and integers. And our third type is going to be floats. They're known as floats because it's short for floating point numbers. Essentially, it's decimals. So var pi equals 3.14, for example. So that creates a variable called pi and sets it equal to 3.14. So when each of these variables are created, what Swift does, it looks at what you're setting the value to and then automatically decides what type of a variable it is on that basis. So final quick challenge for now, can you create a variable called e and set it equal to 2.71? I'm sure you managed that. So var e equals 2.71. So notice, once again, we're not putting any semicolons at the end of the line. We don't need those in Swift. You can put them in if you want to. You'll notice if I put that in, it doesn't give an error or anything. It's fine, but we don't need them. We do need them, however, if we want to put two commands on one line. So if I wanted to create another variable, let's say day equals 3, then in that case, I would need to have a semicolon here at least, and I'd like to have a semicolon there as well, but we don't actually need that second semicolon. So if you want to put two different commands on one line, then you do need a semicolon between them. But if they're on separate lines, then you don't. While we're talking about general syntax, a great thing to put in your code, as we've seen a couple of times now, is comments. So to put a simple comment in, we just put a double slash. And so I might want to say variable types there. If I wanted to put a whole paragraph of comments in, then I would put a slash and a star, then add a few lines, and then star and a slash, and then whatever I put in between these two will be a comment. So this is a multi-line comment. Definitely good practice to get into the habit of commenting your code as thoroughly and as early as you can. It makes it easier for you to keep up with it, and if anyone else has to deal with your code later on, then they can do so. Okay, so we've looked at 3 different variable types: strings, integers, and floats. And we've seen how to define a variable and set it equal a particular value. You might be thinking, how do I define a variable as a certain type without actually giving it a value? I might not know when I want to define the variable exactly what it's going to be. That's easy enough. We can say var, let's get a new variable, let's say year. So that is a perfectly good statement in itself. It defines the variable year, but we need to give it a type. So we use colon and then type integer with a capital I, and then that sets year to be an integer. So we could then set the year to 2014. So this is a new command we haven't seen yet. It's essentially the same as the initial command we had there, but without the var. So we're not creating the variable this time, we're just setting it to a particular value. So the year is 2014, and that's worked out fine. If I try to say set the year to 2000, I get an error because I can't set the year to a string because it's already been established that this year is an integer. We can click on there. Cannot convert the expressions type that to type integer. So that's how we define a variable to be something without setting it to a particular value. And we can do the same thing if we want to, just be really sure of what this is, if we want to set the value anyway. So let's have a variable called son, and we'll set it equal to Tom, my son's name. And if I wanted to be really clear that this was going to be a string, I can do that. So this is a little bit unnecessary, but it just makes it really clear that the variable son is definitely a string. Now notice you might have a variable that you want to be a float because you want it to have the possibility of being a decimal, but it might start off to be an integer. So that might be a good use of this syntax here. If you want to have a variable called pizzas, for example. So maybe we start off with 5 pizzas, but we then want to be able to set the number of pizzas to say 1.2 if we've got 1 and a bit pizzas left. If we've got 1 and a bit pizzas left. So if I type pizzas equals 1.2, of course I get an error because we can't do that. It's already an integer and we can't set it equal to 1.2. So all we need to do is change the type of the variable to float, and then the error goes away. So even though we've set it to 5 initially, we can now set it to a decimal number later on. So that's a useful trick if you want to start something off as a decimal, as an integer, and then change it to a decimal afterwards. Okay, a couple more things. With numerical variables, we can do various bits of arithmetic with them. So I'm just going to show you how to do a few simple sums. So first of all, let's have some variables. We'll have a, which we'll set equal to 4, and we'll have variable b, which we'll set equal to 3. So let's say we want to add the two together and set the two to a new variable called c. Very simple. We define the variable c, and we set that equal to a plus b. And then we can see that c has the value of 7. What if we want to multiply the two together? We've seen that before. We just say a and then asterisk b. Okay, so that's how we manipulate numbers and add and multiply them together. There's obviously a lot more you can do with them, and we'll look into that later, but we're just looking at the basics here. Let's just see a couple of things that we can do with strings. So one thing we can do with two strings is combine them. So let's create a new variable. Let's call it str this time. and we can set it equal to name plus tree, and that will then give it the value Rob Oak, all in one. Take a little while to work that out, but it'll get there. There we go, it's got it now. We can combine a variable with another string, so let's say new string equals my name is plus name, and then that will add the string my name is to whatever name is. So that means it's very easy to put strings inside strings and strings next to strings. What about numbers and floats? Let's have final string. Now we did see this in the challenge from the last chapter, so hopefully you know how to do this. If we want to say the year is 2014, we would say the year is, and then we use a backslash, and in brackets we put the name of our variable. So the year is backslash year, and there we go. The year is 2014. So I'd like to set you a quick challenge to give you an opportunity to practice the skills that you've just learned. It's going to be quite a simple one. I'd like you to create 3 variables. The first will be equal to your name, so you might as well call it name and then set it equal to whatever your name is. The second will be a number, which I'd like you to set to 216. And then the third will be another number, which will be 562. And what I'd like you to do is to create a few lines of code which construct the sentence, my name is, and then whatever your name is, and 216 using the variable name times 562 is equal to, and then use Swift to work out what that is. So the output will be my name is, and then whatever that is, and the first number times the second number equals the final number, and I want you to use variables to produce those numbers. I'll give you a brief moment to pause the video and try that for yourself. I hope you managed it. I'm going to do it now very quickly. So we'll say var name is equal to Rob, and I'll call them A and B. So var A is 216 and var B is 562, and I'm going to create a variable called C, which will be equal to A times B. And then finally we'll have a variable which we could call output or answer or something like that, and that will be my name is, and then we'll stop the string and put name in, and then start the string again, and backslash brackets A, oops, sorry, wrong one, times backslash B equals backslash C. Great, that should do it. We'll just leave Xcode a few moments to work that out. I'll just get rid of those lines because we don't need them anymore. Oh, I've got an error. Did you spot it? I need to put double quotes around Rob. And there we go. Let's just bring that in. My name is Rob, and 216 times 562 is 121392. So that's a brief introduction to variables. We've seen strings, integers, and floats. We've learned how to define a variable as a particular type if we want to, but we've also learned that we don't need to do that. We've learned how to add numbers together, multiply them together, and combine strings, and finally insert numbers into strings. We've also added single line and multi-line comments. Not bad for a few minutes. Let's go on and look at arrays.